Hey everyone, Ilda here from I Love Doing All Things Crafty, and welcome back to another process video. Today's video features a couple of cards that I created for Studio Katia's March blog hop release. As soon as I saw this confetti kindness stamp, I knew I had to create an interactive confetti spinner card. I wanted the card to look like it was throwing confetti as it spun around and around. So I'll share with you how I created this card, as well as another card that doesn't spin but has the same kind of effect. So once you're done watching today's video, make sure you click on the links below to get you to my blog so you can get started on the blog hop and be entered for a chance to win some prizes from Studio Katia. Also on my blog, you'll find a couple of more cards that I created for this hop that I think are pretty creative, but I just didn't have time to film and edit the videos. To create the background for my card today, I'm using watercolor paper, and then I'm rubbing some distress ink on my craft mat, spritzing it and picking that color up with the watercolor paper. I'm using my heat gun in between to dry the colors so that the colors don't run into each other and make a muddy kind of color, and this way it'll keep the colors nice and bright. Now, if you're a fan of Studio Katia's dies, you'll notice that all her dies have this dotted border. To create my center today, I wanted to give the center also that dotted border, but I didn't have a circle die that would coordinate with my outside panel. So here I'm using the semicircle from the new square scallop die set and using it to do some partial die cutting. And as you can see, I've already flipped it and matched it up to the back, and I'm just going to run it again through my Sizzix machine. And again, here I'm doing some partial die cutting by just placing the plate before that straight line, and as you can see, it worked perfectly. Now obviously this step was not necessary, I just wanted to have the dotted look, but you can achieve the same results with a regular circle die that you may have already in your stash. Before I stamp out my sentiment, I want to make sure that my image is lined up properly, so I'm using a piece of masking tape to hold all the pieces in place. Now that my card front is complete, I'll show you how I created the spinner mechanism. So here I've punched out 3 circles and gluing and stacking them together. You'll want to use a heavyweight cardstock to create a thick enough base for the confetti and the stamped sentiment piece to spin on. To create my dangling confetti, I'm using this clear thread that I've purchased at a fabric store, and to straighten it out, I'm just running it through my hands, and the heat of my hands is pulling it straight so that it's easier to work with. And now I'm just taking the pieces of the thread that I've cut and attaching it to the back of that sentiment panel. To attach the confetti to the thread, I flip the confetti piece so that the flat side is facing upwards, and then I add a little bit of glue to it and add the same size confetti to the top, sandwiching the thread in between. This process does take a little bit of time and patience, so make sure you have a great pair of reverse tweezers or a pick-me-up tool that really works well, or else it can get a little bit frustrating. But the results are so worth it in the end. Here I'm just using a little bit of glue to secure the thread equally along the edge of the circle. This is really not necessary, but I just wanted to keep the confetti spread evenly. And now I'm just taking the piece that I created earlier and sandwiching the strings in between. You'll want to make sure that this piece completely dries before moving on to the next step. Here I've left it overnight to dry, and it dries nice and flat and super sturdy. To create the spinner mechanism for my card, I just went through my button stash and found a flat clear button, and I attached it to the center of that confetti piece. And now I'm just using a small circle die and finding the center of the card panel. And I'm just using the stamping block to figure exactly where that center is before I run it through my die cutting machine. Because I wanted the spinner to have some movement within that circle, I used a circle die that was a little bit larger than the button. But if you wanted it not to move up and down within the circle, just find the exact same size as the button you're using. To secure the spin mechanism in place, I just use a small circle punch and I'm just attaching it to the back of the button. Make sure you let that dry completely before moving on. Now that everything is dry, you can go ahead and attach it to your card base. In order for the spin card to work correctly, you'll need to pop up the front panel with some foam tape. Just make sure you don't add any foam tape around that inside circle so that it won't catch on the foam tape while it's spinning. And now that the confetti strings have had plenty of time to dry, I'm just using some scissors to cut off the excess thread. So here you see me using an anti-static tool. Initially I had planned on doing some embossing, but then I realized that if I added heat to this panel, there would be a great chance of melting that plastic thread or even the confetti themselves. So that's pretty much it for this card, but if you want to watch how I create a similar card with the same principles without the spinner mechanism, just stick around and you can watch how I created this card without the spinner mechanism. So for my next card, I'm creating the card directly onto the card base itself. I use the same semicircle to create this circle only because I wanted this little outside ring. Again, this part was not necessary. You could have just used a regular large circle die. So here I'm just using Distress Oxide inks to stamp the confetti star all around the card base. And because Distress Oxide inks take a little while to dry, I just heat set them with some clear embossing powder. So here again, I'm doing the same thing to attach the confetti to the back of my sentiment panel. The only difference here is that I'm using colored confetti. So I went through and picked out sequins the same size, the same color, so that it would make this process a little bit easier. And once again, I'm using the same circle punch to create a stack of circles just to pop up that front stamped sentiment panel. Here I'm just using a Copic marker to color that ring black, and I'm just going to add that to the front panel to add some contrast to the card. So to finish up this card, I'm just adding some more confetti all around into spaces that I've either smeared and want to try to cover it up, or just some empty spaces just to fill in the spots. So that's pretty much it for today's process video. Here's another look at this confetti throwing spinner card in action. So fun, and I love how they move all around the card. And I really like how this card turned out a lot simpler to make, and yet it still has that confetti throwing effect. Hopefully you were inspired by today's cards. Don't forget to check out the links below in the video description to get you started on today's blog hop, or just check out the supplies that I've used. Thank you all for watching, liking, subscribing, and leaving all the wonderful comments. Until next time everyone, happy crafting! Bye!